Hi everybody, Nick here, back with not only some final thoughts about these Arles primes before I sadly have to send them back. These were never meant to be mine forever. They've got demo written right on the bottom of the lens. But in addition to some final thoughts on the lenses, I really want to take a little bit of a broader look and talk about why fast, clean lenses really matter. And more specifically, why they matter to me. After all, this is my channel, and my channel acts as something of a diary on my journey through the filmmaking process as I'm trying to get my first feature film shot and finished. And as I do so, I've, been going through this journey really heavily on lenses. What do I like? What do I not like? How do I like to shoot, and how do I like to make this art? And that's where I come to this subject of why do fast and clean lenses matter. Something I've heard so many times is people say something like, I want my film or my content to look like the movies of the 1970s, of the 1980s. I want to have this feel of these older films, things like Aliens or The Shining. I've never had that feeling. I react very strongly in a negative way against that. Now, there are things I like about how those films are shot, and there are certainly things I love about the look of certain lenses, but I don't have any kind of nostalgia or desire to have a film look as though it was shot on very old equipment when we now have modern technology that offers us such better fidelity. For example, I love the look of newer movies like Dune 2. Those were shot on absolutely the most cutting-edge cameras that exist today, the Alexa Mini LF and the Alexa 65, and a variety of lenses, some very old, some much more modern, but those films were absolutely made with the most cutting-edge technical processes we have today. Those filmmakers had their own priorities and their own desires to make the film look a certain way. As I understand it, Dune 2, at least, was recorded digitally and then reprinted back to film and scanned back in to add a little bit more in the way of film grain and analog artifacts. But nevertheless, the film is absolutely beautiful, critical focus on virtually every shot, in very high resolution. And that's something that I like a lot. Now, why do fast, clean lenses matter? Well, in today's era, virtually anyone can shoot on full frame format. Basically, a 36mm wide digital negative. And that's significantly larger than the majority of films that have been shot throughout cinema history, the majority of which are Super 35 or smaller. Only in the last 20 years or so has so-called large format become something that's accessible even at the high end, much less the independent filmmaker. And the larger your format, the shallower your depth of field for an equivalent field of view and f-stop. And that is a visual language that I particularly love. I love really shallow depth of field that just isolates the subject in such stark relief against the background. And so I've got a comparison here of the Arles 50mm at 1.4 in full VistaVision mode. If we compare that to the same field of view, but on Super 35, and then closed down to 2.8, you can see that what we get is a completely different look. The background is now so much more part of the image. And maybe that's something you like. For me personally, I like having that selective focus most of the time. There are going to be some cases where you really want to see everything all at once, or you want to have less separation. But the brush that I personally like to paint with most of the time is that. Throwing things as wide open as I can, selecting focus on exactly what I want to show, and just racking back and forth if we need to, going from one character to another, or not seeing anything because it's all so blurry, and then zhunk, now you see the object that matters to this particular frame. I'll hear people say, I tend to shoot f4 or lower all of the time. I never open up wider than f4, either because they find it too hard to rack focus accurately, pull focus accurately enough, or because they just like that look better. But for me, there's generally no contest. Again, I'm someone that comes from the stills world, and so that's a technique very common in the stills world, is shooting wide open so much at the time. But I just love the way this looks. Now, let's talk about this in the context of IMAX shooting, which is becoming so much more popular thanks in large part to guys like Christopher Nolan and his DP Hoyt van Hoytema. IMAX is essentially another stop or two larger than full frame. It depends on the exact format you're talking about and the exact image circles we're looking at. Side note, I encourage all of you to get super familiar with this site called Points in Focus that has a brilliant depth of field calculator. So if we're comparing full frame to IMAX, what are we going to get? Again, the larger your format, the shallower the depth of field for an equivalent field of view and f-stop. For the comparison I just showed you, it was 50 millimeters against 35 millimeters. I also changed the aperture. I opened up 2 more stops on the lens, so I cheated my example a little bit, but I showed you a 3-stop difference, whereas if I had just kept the apertures the same, there would have still been a 1-stop difference. But anyway, IMAX gives us another 1 or 2 stops. However, there aren't a lot of IMAX lenses that you can open up as wide as what these beauties will do at their T1.4. With this set, you can have basically the IMAX depth of field. You have the 8K resolution of a camera like the Raptor, which is so much that even on the largest screens, you're not going to be able to see sensor-induced grain. And so this relatively small camera package right here is going to deliver, in my opinion, an effectively equivalent resolution and depth of field to the most advanced IMAX setups. Now, maybe you won't get quite the dynamic range compared to film, but it's gonna be darn close. And as long as you're exposing properly, that won't matter. The film isn't gonna outperform you in a way that's significant enough. Maybe it'll give you a little bit more headroom on the clipping side of things. Okay, so you know that I love fast lenses for their depth of field. What about some other reasons I like them? Well, spherical lenses I love generally because they have so much better close focus than anamorphic lenses. I love the shape of anamorphic bokeh, and I love certain flare characteristics on certain anamorphic lenses. Not a ton of them, but some of them have the most beautiful flares of any lenses out there. But anamorphic lenses generally have bad close focus, and there's virtually 0 anamorphic lenses that can compete with spherical for close focus. Like the Zelmus Apollo lenses have really good close focus, but there's not much else out there that really competes with spherical. Even the ones that are generally really good, like the Laowa Proteus or the Atlas Orion and Atlas Mercury lenses, they have very good close focus for anamorphic, but they still generally don't compete with spherical. And what that means is if you want to get really close to your subject, you're generally going to need a diopter. And then the diopter means that you can't rack from close to far. Anyway, I like that you don't have to deal with those things with spherical lenses. You can just focus close to your subject and throw. And again, anamorphic lenses are often really weak at their widest aperture. Every lens tends to fall apart as you open it up, but anamorphics tend to fall apart more. These lenses, the RL Prime, I will use these wide open every day of the week, every focal length, just about any setting. And that's why I love them so much. I can take shots like the demo ones that I've shown you. Everything I've shown you from an RL Prime has been wide open. The only real artifact that you get is vignetting, and it's easily correctable, especially on a camera like the Raptor that has such clean shadow performance. You can easily raise those corners by a stop and you don't see it. And another reason I love starting with a clean look is that it's very easy to add aberrations or artifacts or other things either in post or with physical filters up front. So sometimes I'll throw a flare filter up here to make lights blow out. For the first 10 minutes of the feature I shot, I absolutely used that for a particular scene where the character has just lost everything and he's like freaking out. We threw on a flare filter and a streak filter so that the image just kind of goes a little bit nuts. And then we even add some grain and some other effects on top of that to make things look real, you know, a little bit dysphoric and like he doesn't know where he is or what he's going to do. But you can add that to a clean lens quite easily. Whereas if you have a lens with very strong character, of course, that character is going to be baked into every shot you take. And it comes down to what your taste is. If there's a lens that you love the look of with all of its flaws and you're cool with that for every shot you take with that lens, more power to you. For me personally, I tend to like a cleaner look most of the time. What I want to spend my time on is lighting, composition, blocking, set decoration, those types of things, and then recording it in a really clean, high resolution way that I can then alter a little bit on the back end if I want to, but generally the composition that I see there is as I record it. I think people tend to vastly underestimate the importance of lighting and the importance of getting really, really particular with every last degree of angle on your key light, or exactly how it's being bounced or gridded or whatever. The finest differences can make such a big change in your final image. In my opinion, much more so than whether you're using lens A or lens B or camera A or camera B. So I find myself time and again coming back to lenses like this. I love the look of fast, sharp, clean sphericals and spending my time more on other things. The more time I've spent with these lenses, the more I've loved them. Yes, they're a little bit heavier, but in my experience, that weight is absolutely worth whatever trouble it causes you. They're essentially flawless. There is virtually nothing I would change about these lenses. The industrial design is great. The markings on the lenses are really nice and big and bright and easy to see, and they even stay legible when you put the lens cap on. That's not the case with every lens, and it's a small thing, but again, it's something I like. I really could not be happier with these lenses, and hopefully this video helps you illustrate why I think they matter to me. That's about all I got for now. Quick channel update. Because of you guys and the fact that you come here to listen to me rant, a number of brands in the last week have contacted me. I must have exceeded some threshold just recently because something like 6 different brands in about a week contacted me saying, hey, we noticed your channel, will you review our stuff? I tend to be pretty selective about that stuff, not because I'm important or cool or anything, but because the purpose of this channel is not to be a review channel. Again, it's kind of a diary of my own process. And so only when there's something that I actually think could be useful to me personally, and then that I would have something relevant to say about it that might be helpful to someone out there, only in that case am I going to say yes. So there are a couple of those coming up. I'll let you know when that situation has occurred. So thank you for making this channel popular enough that people are noticing and reaching out to me. It tells me that some of you are finding this content worthwhile. So again, thank you so much. Thank you for being here and listening to my crazy rants. This will probably be my last video on the Arles primes for a while. Like I said, these have to go on to another reviewer, but DZOFilm said that in the future, if they can loan me a 25, 50, and 100 all at once, they'll try and get those to me so that I can show you the kind of content I would make with my little desert island trio set. Anyway, that's all for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.